Welcome to another edition of my interviews with my go-to experts. Because when you are in business, whether you're at the start of your journey, halfway through your journey, years into your journey, it can still feel like a really lonely path. And there are lots of things that we need to look at, we need to learn to do, and it can be really overwhelming. Also, our health is really important, where my guest comes in today. But before I introduce her, in case we've not met before, my name is Lindsay Burden and I'm an intuitive business coach, and I guide, inspire and motivate my clients to create wildly successful businesses and a time-rich lifestyle. And for that lifestyle, you need good health, which is where my guest comes in today. I was going to say good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure where we are, but hello, Julia, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Wonderful to be here.
And I'm going to tell people a little bit about you. So Julia Alderman of Nourishing Way Limited. Now, I always ask my guests to provide an introduction. So Julia, you're a nutritional therapist and yoga teacher with over 15 years of clinical experience. And you work with clients and businesses across the globe to regain their health and thrive through addressing root causes with personalized nutritional and self-inquiry. You specialize in helping individuals to overcome fatigue, burnout, overwhelm, anxiety, and sleep problems, and provide a structured route back to full health. So I think you've described some business owners at some point right there in that description. But Julia, thank you so much for joining me today. Well, tell us a little bit about your background and your journey. Where did how did you get to this point, I guess?
Thank you, Lindsay. Essentially, nutrition and yoga have been a part of my life pretty much my whole life. So got into nutrition through my own health as a child, began yoga at 15. And for me, it was really that conventional routes, they help to some extent, but for me, there was so much around diet and lifestyle and reducing stress that I actually needed to keep things at bay. So that's really how I came to nutrition, and it's been a part of my life since then. So I really feel I've had that direct experience of what these shifts can do. And since that point in time, through my own health, I've always come back to those. I had post-viral fatigue as well in my late 20s. And again, through exploring these different avenues of nutrition and testing, functional medicine, stress reduction, and really going into it deeper, that was really powerful for me. Yeah.
And out of interest, Julia, is there a direct link between nutrition and yoga? Which sounds like a daft question, but it just feels like they're two beneficial things. And I just wonder if there is a link there, and that's how you came about to do both.
For me, the link is really, if you're looking at the big picture of health and looking at things very holistically. And I think a lot of yoga, people maybe think of as physical poses and more of an exercise.
Yeah.
Obviously, it being very much that way to calm the mind, to focus on the breath. And once you deepen into that practice, it being a meditation practice and a process of self-inquiry that you can really take through your day in terms of bringing your attention to your day continuously in the way you feel, the way you are, your emotional responses to things.
You use that word self-inquiry a couple of times in the notes that I've got in front of me. And what does self-inquiry mean?
It can mean lots of things. For me, and the way that I use it is inquiry into how things are impacting you. So your own knowledge through your own questioning. So we can do self-inquiry in meditation, which might be around a particular emotion, around a particular thought, around a particular issue that we're stuck with.
Yeah.
And I think when we go inwards in that process, those answers come up from inside. And I think that in and of itself is more empowering than always having the external information come to us when we've come to that own understanding ourselves.
And I think this will become even clearer when we go into the 3 points that you wanted to share and get across with us today. But I really love that it's about you. And in this world that we live, where we are bombarded with information about health, about well-being and diets and everything else, it feels really powerful to come back to you.
Yes, and I think that's partly why I'm so passionate about what I do, because as well as the massive transformative power that nutrition and yoga have, I've also seen with clients that it can be disempowering. So people who have come to me following external advice and have been really disempowered by that. And what I mean by that is very much disconnected from their own knowing on what's right for them, and therefore pushing through. So pushing through on restrictive eating or avoiding certain foods, or pushing through on yoga postures and hurting themselves, or so we need to ensure that in order for it to have that transformative effect, it's coming from a place of empowerment and not disempowerment that's actually disconnecting us and shrinking us down.
Yeah, and I think there's a real challenge, and not to go into the health and well-being industry and everything else that's there. It just feels like, this diet is a holy grail, but actually it's about you and your body and how you react in different ways. And that's what you're talking about, I guess, is that coming back to you and that more personalized approach.
Absolutely. And really bringing those two elements together of the science, which, is huge and so fantastic. We have so much access to it, and applying it to the terrain of your own system. And that's going to be different, depending on our lifestyle, our age, whether we're ill, how stressed we are, how we've slept, all of these things. Yeah.
I love that, the terrain. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, I always ask my guests for a topic or a title for us to use, and the one you came up with was the power of personalized nutrition, and I think everybody will immediately go, okay, that makes good sense from what you've already said. Now, the first thing we wanted to talk about and you wanted to share with us was investing in your health means you can thrive in your business, all areas of life. Did you want to expand on that for us, please?
So I think the first key point is really prioritizing self-care, and self-care through those things that nourish us, whether it's through food, through lifestyle choices, things that reduce our stress. Because I think so often people normalize suboptimal health, normalize feeling tired, normalize bad sleep, regular headaches, feeling overwhelmed. And actually, you don't have to feel like that. And how would it be to actually wake up feeling amazing, to go through your day not having to rely on coffee and sugar, and not have those slumps, and all those little niggles? What if actually they didn't have to be there, and you could therefore be your most present full self across your day? And how creative would that mean you could be with your work, with your relationships, with family, etc.?
Why do you think we've normalized it? Because when you said it, it really rang true and really resonated with me that we're really good at going, oh, it's just a headache. Oh, I just feel tired because I had a late, we're really good at normalizing it.
I think a lot of it is there is a big disconnect from the body. I think the world we live in is very head-based. We do a lot of work that is in the head. And so it's quite easy for us to want to actually shut down the physical body and, try and go, oh, I'll get over my fatigue with more coffee. I'll get rid of my headache with painkiller. And so I think on the one hand, there's that disconnect with the body. And on the other hand, there is also that prioritizing productivity over rest. And that's another real passion of mine, that actually, rest is something that we should all be entitled to have, and to prioritize it without the guilt, without the shame, without everything else that comes with it. And, it'd be wonderful if people, took that responsibility before they have to. So when I say that, it's kind of before they're at that point when they can't get out of bed and they have to rest, because eventually the system will say enough's enough and people get ill, because that's what happens. Yeah.
When you talk about rest, are you talking about sleep or sleep and that resting? Because I think we also live in a world where we're not very good at doing nothing. We're not very good at just sitting and being and allowing our body to rest. It's like the only time we do that is when we go to bed.
I think both. So I think, yes, getting restorative sleep is really important, but I think also just being able to do something that, when I say rest, I suppose it's more about coming out of the sympathetic nervous system. So getting out of that fight and flight and doing something that is going to nurture you. So that might be actually stepping away from a stressful work thing and going for a short walk. It might be doing a meditation. It might be doing something with a pet, like whatever it is that works for that person, but being okay with not having to be on the whole time.
Yeah, because I certainly have recognized in myself at times, I find it really hard to do nothing, to do something for me, to take time out. And I think that's probably a trait in women, particularly, those that are carers, whether it's children or they, adults or elderly parents. I think we're very good at putting everyone else first.
Yeah.
But there's a reason we have to put our own oxygen mask on first.
Yeah, I think that's where sometimes micro practices can come in, because I'm also very realistic that we do have full lives, but sometimes really small practices can have a really massive benefit. And that might be connecting to the breath a few times before you eat. It might be doing a 10-minute meditation mid-afternoon. Doesn't necessarily have to take an hour or, be a huge time commitment. So we always have to start where people are at and build things in that are going to be practical and achievable within the context of business and lifestyle.
I think that's the other challenge, is that we all think that we have to make these massive changes. And what you're saying actually is just start really, really small and start with the things that you can do and that you can incorporate into life.
Yeah, because ultimately otherwise you do it for a week and then it's out of the window because it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I can't remember who it is that talks about habit stacking, and he said he started, and I'm really sorry because I can't remember who it was, but he wanted to start doing some press ups or something. So he'd put the kettle on, because his habit every morning he went down and made a coffee. So he put the kettle on and he did his press ups or whatever it was, and then it was just adding something else and adding something else and adding something else. Not that I'm advocating for coffee or boiling the kettle. He might have been drinking a herbal tea. I can't remember. But the point was, he was just going, okay, so I do that every morning and then I stand there. What can I do?
Yeah,
So I love that. Starting small is
fantastic.
incorporating it into life, and that's what he was trying to get across.
Definitely.
We've covered so much already, and we were only on point one. I had the feeling
Brilliant.
this would happen. The next thing we wrote down here, and actually before we move on, I think you've done really well. It is so important that we look after our health and that we prioritize self-care, whether you're in business or whether you're not. And that's the key thing. It's essential for us to be able to, to use your word earlier that I read, to thrive in business, in life, and to make the most of the time that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a lovely summary. Yeah, thank you.
With that summary, I've set the bar high now. I hope I can do that again. The next point was functional tests provide knowledge of your individual biology, and this knowledge is power. Tell us more about functional tests and what you're meaning by that.
Yeah, so with nutritional therapy, as well as looking at diet and the food you eat, nutritional therapists also look at functional tests. And those tests give information on how your system's working. So, for example, that might be a comprehensive stool test, it might be a food intolerance test, adrenal function test, thyroid test, and so there's a whole plethora of tests that we could look at. And by having test results, it's very validating for clients to have a deeper understanding of why they feel the way they do. So if we take sleep as an example, so someone may have poor sleep. That might be because melatonin's low, for example. You can test for that. It might be that cortisol is really high, so they're stressed and therefore they can't get to sleep. It might be down to an imbalance in immune function and histamine being high, and that's disrupting sleep. It might be blood sugar issues and blood sugar's dropped and therefore they're waking up at night. It might be hormonal imbalances. So by doing the test, we take away the guesswork and we're empowering the client. So we're saying, well, of course you can't sleep well, because we can see here from your adrenal test, your cortisol is sky high at night when it's supposed to be low. And therefore, these are the things that we're going to do to try and address it. And those things that we would then do to try and address it would be through diet, supplements, lifestyle, to bring that cortisol down so someone can then have fantastic sleep. And obviously that approach would be very different to someone else who might come with exactly the same problem, but actually the underlying root cause is very different. For someone else, the underlying root cause might be a blood sugar issue or high histamine, for example. So I think having that knowledge from tests and the science to back up what's happening in your own body is very empowering.
Which is where that personalized piece comes in, isn't it? Because it's about your body.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a quick question. You were talking about the different tests and it kind of went on and on. I was thinking, goodness, where do you even start? And is it something that it is you just keep testing until you find the answer? Or is it because of your experience, knowledge, and expertise, you can go, I've got a feeling it's going to be this and be able to do it? Because otherwise it sounded like there were a lot of tests.
Yeah, no, so absolutely the latter. So if I'm working with a client one-to-one, before they come to see me, they'd fill in quite a detailed questionnaire about medical history, lifestyle, diet, etc. So depending on, what symptoms they're presenting with, lifestyle, medical history, background, things like that,
That would give you a...
I would tend to know which system is the most likely to be the priority to work on, and we would therefore test that system. Generally, that would come back with something we could work on. If it didn't, we would then look to a second test. But I'm absolutely not someone that says, we need to do 10 tests up front. No. and also, for some clients, actually testing might not be appropriate, whether that's financially or whether it produces a lot of stress for them. And in which case that's fine too. But I would say in an ideal world, to have a test can be very helpful. And in terms of protocols that we then work on, it's very useful. Yeah.
And when you talk about testing, are these sort of blood tests or?
A whole mixture, yeah. So some blood tests, some saliva, some stool, urine, yeah, a mix.
But it's very reassuring to hear. And I think that you've raised a really, well, you didn't raise it, but I might. It's really important that you find someone that has the expertise and knowledge, because it could otherwise be quite a long journey and could find quite a lot of testing done. So it's really important that you find which raises the question actually for me, which is why I'm struggling to say it. Are nutritionists, is there somewhere, if someone was looking for a nutritionist, where would they go? How would they know that they have the knowledge and expertise that you have?
Yeah, so the place to go would be BANT. So I'm a BANT registered nutritional therapist, and also registered with CNHC, but BANT would be the place to go for. Yeah.
It was only as you were saying, I was thinking, God, this could be quite a and I think it's important to have raised that actually, because people have health issues and then they don't go and get the help because so-and-so has mentioned this person, someone else has mentioned that, and you get information overload, and people can be quite fearful of trying something that is not necessarily their GP.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, I think a couple of things. Quite often, a lot of my work will come through recommendations. So, that word of mouth referral where someone has actually really found tremendous benefit and they have really changed the way they felt. And then they've gone on to tell family and friends, and then they come to see me and then theirs. And because, like you said, absolutely has to be the right fit, and you have to know, trust and like someone and know that they have got the expertise in the area that they want help in. Yeah.
And presumably they need to be at a point where they want to get that help. Because I think we can all, it's about us taking responsibility for our health, isn't it? And if it feels like, you're trying something that might not be on your radar or might not be something that you immediately thought of first, but you need to be at that point where you really want to help yourself.
Yeah, and I guess I think that's the positive side to the wellness industry, is that there is so much more information around now and so many more people being willing to explore alternative routes, compared with back when I was 15. It was a very relatively unheard of thing to do, whereas now it's not really seen that way. But like you say, I think people really have to have that will, that desire, and to recognize that it takes that commitment to change, but at the same time working with a practitioner who's going to meet that person where they're at. And that's what I'm all about. I have to meet someone where they're at to change at a pace that's right for them. So the advice that I give to different people could be very different depending on what they've tried before, how fast they want to change, so yeah.
So the testing is how you personalize the treatment and personalize the transformation for somebody. And I guess almost it's in the personalization that makes it happen potentially more swiftly because it's about.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So going back to that example that I gave before with the sleep, if you didn't test, you could spend money on supplements and lifestyle interventions and other things that actually didn't get to the root cause because you hadn't done the test. Whereas actually by doing the test, you're streamlining that process so it can be that bit more targeted, so it can be that bit more efficient. Yeah.
More quickly. And I think sleep's a really good example because you could keep going back to the GP going, no, I'm still not sleeping. And no disrespect to any GPs, but that they're dealing with things in a different way and they're looking at things in a different way. So they might try this and then this. And it just feels like to actually have those tests just makes it such a quicker process to feeling better.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I think I should also clarify in terms of my role as a nutritional therapist, I don't diagnose conditions and I don't treat conditions, but I support the system to restore function.
I really
Yeah.
like that. And I'm glad we did that. That's a really great way of doing it. And a perfect point. Okay, number 3. The more you listen to your body and turn inwards, the more you are empowered with your diet choices. And I just loved reading that and I loved seeing it when I did. And I think it makes even more sense now, having had the conversation that we've already had and bringing us to this piece. It's perfect timing for us. So what's this listening to your body and empowered diet choices? And I was going to panic and go diet choices, and now it feels like we're going into that dieting mode, but I know that's not what you mean. But so listening to your body and being intuitive, and you mentioned something to me really, really important before we started recording on why this piece is almost number 3.
Yeah. So in terms of this listening, I feel it's a really essential part of that empowerment so that we have that connection with the body and our own instinct on food. But it does have to come later down the pathway, because otherwise you could be eating intuitively when your body is very out of balance, and therefore the choices that you're making are, yes, what your body is asking for, but maybe not, but may not necessarily be the most helpful. So what I mean by that, if someone has quite significant blood sugar swings where it's going up and down a lot, if you have a blood sugar low, absolutely you're going to crave something sweet. And so you'll go for that. And that's absolutely, it makes complete sense because your body needs sugar to bring it back up again. So yes, that's a great thing from that perspective. But actually, if first of all, we're working on getting in more helpful diet choices to stabilize blood sugar, and then bring that intuitive eating part in, then it's going to be a lot more helpful. Yeah.
Because our bodies are so clever, aren't they? And I think if any, I think when we're talking about intuitive, eating, anyone, you've only got to think of that time when you're thirsty. And I know if you think you're thirsty, it's already too late. You are dehydrated. But it's that same thing, isn't it? Your body's telling us what we need. But what you're saying is there is a danger there that if you haven't addressed what's going on, your body will be craving the wrong things. Would that be right to say?
I think there's a potential for that. So obviously, depending where someone's health is starting from, for someone who is generally in pretty good health, then yes, they could bring that in, because I think, like I say, it's already there in terms of, we probably know that if we've had a later night, then perhaps you might need to eat more the next day for breakfast, for example, if you haven't had as much sleep. Or we intuitively know that if you do more exercise, you are going to want to eat more, or so it's such a nuanced picture. So there are definitely there's intuitive eating that happens all the time. So if you have flu and you're in bed, you intuitively don't actually want to eat, and you want quite particular things. So yeah.
It's so interesting. Our body is so clever.
It
So,
absolutely is.
so it's about, just to recap on those 3 points, really. So it's investing in your health so that you can be the best that you can be and live the most incredible life, or be productive in your business, but also at work.
Yeah.
It is the testing that provides that personal element, that very personalized chat. I'm being very careful not to use the word treatment now, but that very personalized approach
Yeah.
to the symptoms that you're experiencing. And then, having done steps 1 or 2, it means that your body is more likely to be intuitively telling you the things that you need, which will be right for you because you've done those other 2 things. Does that sound right? Have I
That
summed it?
absolutely does, yes. And with that part 3, there's that absolute ownership. So you can continue on that path as a lifelong process, because as our life and our circumstances change, the things we might need to eat are going to change as well, so that you're not stuck in a rigid way of eating and being, and you've got that flexibility. Yeah.
That's quite interesting you said that, actually, because I'm now just thinking about my children and what they crave and those kind of things. And then as a woman, you go through various different cycles. And so
Yeah.
that isn't, I can see how certainly for women, I'm sure it happens for men, but certainly
Yeah.
for women, how naturally our body needs different things.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's a real challenge as well. And I don't know how you feel about it, but it just feels, I've mentioned that there's information overload. And I think for women particularly, it's really easy for us to go, it's perimenopause or it's menopause. And I worry that we've got, and I'm just using that one particular example, I worry that there are so many things that we can label it that we don't get to the root.
Yes, I think that's true. I think that's why you need to do the deep dive into different areas. And I would say, with that example of perimenopause or menopause, there's also a lot of lifestyle and other things that can be put in place to support the system. And to look at the whole big picture without labeling certain things all the time. Yeah.
I think we're very good at that, labeling things. Do you think there's been a change in, I think you've touched on it already, but it feels like there is a definite shift in us wanting to take more responsibility for our health, wanting to be healthier, and not in a I must go on a diet kind of way?
I definitely agree. I think there's definitely more awareness around it. And I think that's really uplifting to see. Yeah. And there's almost like you have to reach a certain point of disconnect. And I think, that disconnect from the body and natural food, and that expansion of more ultra processed food. It's almost like it's reached that tipping point, and now more and more people are coming back to those more natural ways and cycles. Yeah.
So it's good news. It's good to have some good news. It's
It
all
is.
good. We like that a
We
lot.
definitely want the good news.
Now, one of the questions I also ask, and I don't always cover it, but I think we will today. So I always ask, if you had to start your business again, what one thing would you do differently? And I don't know if you remember, you wrote, I would learn lots more about running a business from day one. And I think that's
It would.
probably I think
I
that's
know.
probably true of nearly everyone that starts a business.
Yeah.
So that feels very much like you would do that.
Yeah, so I went into nutrition and yoga for the love of those disciplines rather than because I wanted to be self-employed. And if I could have done those in an employed way, I would have done. So I went into it knowing very little about business. And yeah, so if I could rewind, then absolutely I would have learned a lot more and worked with a business coach for sure.
And I think that happens often in the holistic and the health and well-being industry, is that you do something because you love it. You do something because you know it makes a difference. You do something and want to do more of it with more people because you know it, it really helps people and it's transformational. And that the business bit isn't the bit you want to do. It's not your zone of genius. And I think that happens a lot. And I've certainly coached people in the industry, and it's great to give them some skills and tools, but actually it's what they love doing most that's most important to them.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's great to kind of expand and grow into those areas, and I've certainly learned a lot along the way. So
the journey, as it is for us all.
exactly.
Now, if somebody, well, I've got two questions actually. One, how do you work with people? Because I think that's important for everybody to know. And the second part of that question is, where do they find you if they want to find out more?
Brilliant. So yes, I work with the clients either one-to-one. I also run some courses, and I'm also available for corporate work. So businesses wanting workshops, for example, on how to eat to increase energy, vitality, things like that. Can find me through my website mostly, which is juliaalderman.com.
Perfect. And I will make sure that link is below. And there is almost another conversation, another question. No social media accounts there, I notice.
I do have one, but I'm not a massive fan.
I love it. Don't become one, because
I
once you become
know.
one, that's a whole nother thing you've got to do. I just love it. You
Yeah,
just have to
just
go to
go to
the
the website.
perfect. Julia, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for sharing those three important pieces and for really giving us an insight into the work that you do, and giving us hope, I think, as well, that we are all wanting to be healthier and to live healthier lives and want to take more responsibility. So thank you for giving us hope as well.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And absolutely, just that final parting point of, yes, for your listeners out there, that please don't put up with niggling symptoms that you normalize, because they don't have to be there.
And
So
that's a
yeah.
perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.